Hi, I'm Kai.
Hi, I'm Jordan, and welcome to Craft Corner.
We're here with Miss Petsche.
Hello.
They can't see your face, but they can see my hands.
Cool.
We're here with Miss Petsche. We're going to talk about Day of the Dead, which I'm very excited for.
Me too.
And we're just going to color and make little skull masks.
Little calaveras. I love calaveras.
All right. So could you explain what Day of the Dead is?
Sure. So Day of the Dead is a tradition that kind of originally started in Mexico predominantly, but some other Latin American nations celebrate it as well. It is an interesting blend of indigenous celebration with some Catholic customs to it, courtesy of the Spanish conquest of most of Latin America at the time. It is kind of melded into this mix of celebration where on November 1st and 2nd, it is believed, because of the kind of Mexican and Latin American view of death, that on those days souls that have passed will return to visit with their families and visit with their loved ones for an evening. There is most people know the November 1st and 2nd part, but there's actually kind of some days leading up to Day of the Dead where other or more specific groups are also celebrated for Day of the Dead. So people will start their ofrendas, their altars, kind of the last-ish week of October, and then there are sometimes different days dedicated to different people or even pets. So October 27th, for example, is a day for people to celebrate deceased pets, and the pets come back that day. And the big thing with the ofrenda, which is just offering in Spanish, the altars, is you put things on the ofrenda like candles to help guide the souls, or you put water to quench the thirst of your souls. You put a common is pan de muerto, bread of the dead, to have some food or sustenance, and the cempasúchil marigold flower as well is a common symbol, because that is a flower that has been around since those ancient times, especially in Latin America. But then you also want to put things that your deceased relatives enjoyed since they're coming back to visit you that day. Things that they liked in life, foods they liked, or if they played cards or things like that, are all things you would put in your ofrenda so that they can have those things and enjoy those things when they come to visit the families. And again, I am by no means an expert, as I am not a Mexican person. I don't traditionally celebrate this in my own family, but it is one of my favorite cultural things to talk about. I think it's such a beautiful celebration. I saw on social media this year a lot of people asking, I don't want to culturally appropriate these traditions, but I think it's such a beautiful celebration. And I saw a lot of, Mexican, Latin American people saying, no, please do. Please make an ofrenda. If you want to make an ofrenda, we love sharing our culture. So I thought that was really cool. So
That was really cool.
I didn't make one this year because I didn't have time, but I might do it next year in my house. So
Yeah. How is Day of the Dead different in different cultures?
So it's different based on regionally. So it has started to kind of come to the U.S. a little bit more in your big cities or in your predominantly Spanish-speaking parts of the U.S. I've noticed, like California, down in the Southwest and whatnot. It's also a regional difference, I would say. So in your big cities, you're going to see parades. You're going to see these big processions. I know in one part of Mexico, I believe it's Oaxaca, one thing that's kind of specific to that region that they do is they do these gorgeous sand art in the street and these gorgeous depictions of some symbols and common, characters like La Catrina and whatnot for Day of the Dead. But in your so you'll see that in LA and whatnot too, the big parades and the big celebrations and whatnot, because they have a really large Latin American Spanish speaking community. But in your smaller towns, your pueblos in Mexico, they do a lot more with family as well. Usually they'll have an ofrenda inside of the home, there's traditions in some towns where if you've had a loved one that has passed like that year, you have like a procession in the town that like will come, not a procession, but like you invite the people of your town and they bring offerings to the ofrenda in your home for your loved one that has passed away. It just kind of depends on the traditions of specific families also and how they do it. So, because not everybody does it exactly the same way. People will go to the cemeteries also and decorate gravestones and bring those offerings as well. I know a lot of times when people think Day of the Dead, they think of the movie Coco, which is a great movie. And
It's a good movie.
It's such a good movie. And does some pretty solid depictions of the, you know, symbols and some of the things that people do for Day of the Dead.
So how do you celebrate Day of the Dead in your classroom? Because I know you do, and I know it's kind of a yearly thing.
Yeah, so I try to spend the week, if we can, like the week of Day of the Dead, I try to spend that week on it. So we usually spend a couple days learning about the history and traditions of Day of the Dead, like where does it come from, how is it celebrated, where is it celebrated, what are some of those symbols you're gonna see, some important rituals of Day of the Dead. So we kind of do a couple days just to learn that background knowledge, and then it depends on the year and if I have time, but I usually do, when we have time, I like to have my kids do their own ofrenda project, where they can choose a family member if they want that has passed, or I know that not everybody is necessarily super comfortable with death, so I also will say, you know, if you have a pet that has passed away, or a celebrity or a character in a series or a game or something that you're fond of, and I have them kind of make their own little mini ofrenda for someone. So they want it, so they include things like a photo or a drawing of that person, some of those things I mentioned earlier.
No!
Just missed. Some of the things I mentioned earlier, like the candles, that Senbasuchu marigold flower, your bread of the dead, your water, and then some typical items that are significant to that person as well. Some people get you're good. Some people get really elaborate with it. I've had people do these really cool like shoebox ofrendas before, and they like hand make everything. I don't know. Other people make like posters where they like cut out paper, or I've had some people print a bunch of stuff out. So just I kind of like to, I have kind of specific, here's what I do to include, but I kind of let them do whatever speaks to them on how they want to make their own ofrendas. So I've had some really, really cool examples in the past.
So why do you think it's important to teach students about this?
Well, because it's like learning a language is obviously important, and everybody should learn language, but you can't learn a language without also learning a lot of the cultural aspects that come with learning a language. You know, it's not just like, oh, I can speak this language now. There's so much that goes along with that language, whether it's French, whether it's Spanish, whether it's Portuguese, whether it's Russian. You know, there's you know, cultural things from that nation or those nations that you have to take into account, because, you know, language has developed so much over time. Even English, you know, if you look at old English where, you know, you had your big S looking letters that were like F's, those, like, how much has English changed over time because of various cultural and historical things. You know, I think it's an important part of learning a language is also learning about the cultures behind those languages and the people that speak those languages already, because it is important to learn about other people in the world. And if you want to communicate with other people in the world, you can't just learn the language to talk. You should learn, you know, about them and their histories and their traditions and the things that they do in their daily lives as well. And Day of the Dead is just one of my favorite ones to do, because I think it's a really cool perspective on, you know, death. You know, death isn't just the end. It's just, you know, the next part of life is kind of how it's viewed by a lot of Mexicans and Latin Americans and the Spanish-speaking community.
Lovely.
Oh, how do you make your classroom more inclusive for students?
I try to vary some like activities that we do in class. I try to include other like outside things or things that are relevant to students as well. You know, I make it clear to my kids day one, you know, we don't do anything that's going to be racist or homophobic, or like we don't make comments like that. We don't do that in this room. And I try to include, you know, I have all my kids kind of fill out an interest survey at the beginning of the year just to kind of get to know them a little better without doing the icebreaker, get to know you games that we always do at the beginning of the year. And also then it's a little more private. So, you know, if there's something students want to share with me privately that maybe they aren't comfortable doing what's in front of the whole class, like they can do that and then I'm aware of it. And then I can keep those things in mind for the future without them necessarily being, you know, embarrassed or feel like a spotlight's on them in front of other kids. But I just try to keep it a welcoming space. They can talk to me about, you know, whatever they need to, whether that's in person, whether it's an email. I try to keep it, you know, open for them as well, open communication, because that's important.
Why do you think it is important for students to learn a different language?
Okay, so yeah, I kind of touched on that. But I think it's important. We're like one of the only countries where it's not necessarily mandated that you just learn another language, especially from a young age. I know there are some areas in the country where that is a thing where you learn at a young age, but you know, if you go to pretty much any other country in the world, they speak at least 2 languages, at least, if not more. And I feel like we're really at a disadvantage because we don't typically always emphasize the importance of learning a language. And I think regardless of whatever field you want to go into in the future, if you know another language, that's automatically going to make you more marketable, more able to communicate across any and all fields. You know, I know in the medical field, for example, like, you know, we have a very large Spanish speaking population in some areas. We have a large Somali population in other areas. You know, it's important to be able to communicate with patients, with people in different industries, and it's important to be able to, you know, market yourself. It's important to be able to talk to people regardless of what it's for. And it also helps your English skills. People don't believe me until they start learning a language. Learning another language helps you understand English better.
I understood Spanish more than I understood English, and I've spoke English my whole life.
Exactly. So I just like, it helps your brain. And honestly, what harm is it in being able to talk to other people? You know, no matter what you want to do with your life, you're gonna be able to do more if you're able to communicate with other people. Whether even sign language. I wish I had sign language when I was in school as well. I would have loved to learn sign language to be able to communicate with the deaf community. I think that's such a rare ability that people are able to do nowadays, because you don't really get that a lot in schools, not until college at least.
I think your markers are so organized, and ours are like...
I just don't want to keep reusing the same ones again. That's why I keep adding them to my file.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm just going crazy.
You're fine.
Huh?
I know, I don't know what I want to do here.
I just went, I'm gonna be silly with the eyes.
Cute.
I like
I
it.
love all the bright colors. If you're interested, I am leading a trip to Costa Rica June of next year. It is coming up very soon. I have details on the trip information. I do understand it is pricey. However, you have to keep in mind the really cool thing about this trip is literally everything is covered for you on the trip. Flights are covered, stays are covered, transportation from location to location is covered. All of our activities that we're doing are covered. So we're doing some really cool things. I think I picked a good trip. We're gonna go ziplining in the rainforest. We're gonna
that's so cool.
hike up a volcano. We're gonna go see some of the black sand beaches. We're going to do a cool little cooking class. We're gonna go visit a school. All that good stuff.
Sorry, the bell just rang.
No, it's